Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. It's Christina from Our Wood Home. Today I'm going to be taking you for a tour of my vegetable gardens. This is going to be a two-part video instead of one long video. I'm going to be showing you the preserving garden in a different video and then the harvest garden in this video. And when I say garden, I mean several locations around the yard. I make do with what I have, and this works very well for me to have the gardens all spread out across the property. So let's go take a look at what's growing in the harvest gardens. And the things growing here, we will eat fresh as they are ready to harvest. We're going to start off with what's growing in these two planters. Along this area, I have some cucumber right there. And I think this is cucamelon. I'm not 100% sure because I thought I planted them a little bit further down. I should also add that everything here has been grown from seed. I don't buy any seedlings from nurseries or garden centers or anything. You're going to see a lot of dill just growing everywhere, and that's on purpose. I scattered dill seeds in the early spring through pretty much every garden because it fills in nicely. I love dill and it can be a natural pest deterrent. So in this row from this bean to about there should be lots of beans growing, but we just have this one, which is okay. And then there are some beans and snow peas, it seems. I think for the beans in this section, I just scattered a handful of assorted beans and peas that were kind of just floating around in my seed container. So it'll be a surprise when everything pops up. In this section, there should be eggplant. I don't think it's done anything. I haven't seen any seedlings, but I'm seeing a few of these, and I don't know if that is eggplant. So I'm just going to leave them and see what grows from here. Moving on to the other side, of course, more dill. This row is lettuce. And then over here, I have some tomato plants. These are quite small, I know. I think these are tomato seeds that we found from David's grandmother. So she had just saved them from some tomatoes that she had grown in her garden, probably 10, 12 years ago. So we'll see if those do anything. And then back here, I believe this is cucumber or zucchini. I think this was a last minute decision to plant this here, so it's not on my garden diagram. So again, we'll see what happens when it starts to grow. Over here, I should have parsnip. It seems like I just maybe have this one. Maybe there's a couple others, but it hasn't done very well for some reason. Throughout the garden, you're also going to see a lot of what looks like ragweed, but it's marigold, and that again is intentional. Let's cross over to the other one. Here are a ton of tomatoes. You can't even really clearly see because they're so bushy and shrubby. But these tomatoes we're just going to eat fresh as they ripen instead of preserving them, which is what I usually do. Here is some more cucumber. These are just so wild, so bushy. I'm thinking of maybe transplanting a few and just moving them somewhere else because I do actually have some little tomatoes in there and I want them to get some sun. This is some beets, which again we will eat fresh instead of canning them. And on this side, more marigold, but this is supposed to be carrots. And there should be carrots in this section too, but I think they're just a little bit small. And of course, these giant leaves are shading everything, so I'm going to have to prune that plant. In this little corner, I have some more lettuce, and there's more tomatoes across there. This area is a little bit hard to see, and it's kind of hard to distinguish the grapevine over here from the peas that are growing here. But this is what we call the pea planter because we grow Swedish peas here. If you're familiar with my channel, you might remember a pen pal of mine in Sweden sent these seeds to me, and we like growing these Swedish peas because they're just so delicious. Last year, I think I let most of them get really mature and then saved the peas inside for drying and cooking later. but I think we'll probably just eat all these fresh, and then I'll do a second sowing so that we get some more throughout the summer that we can preserve later. In this planter, I also have some cabbage. Well, I'm supposed to have cabbage. It's very tiny, so teeny tiny. I'm watering it, it's getting lots of light, but it's just taking its sweet time, so I'm not very confident that it will be ready to harvest before the frost or the winter. This section is my herb garden, and I apologize if it's hard to hear, but I'm right next to the air conditioner unit. So this is herbs and medicinal flowers. So of course there's lots of dill growing in there and some marigolds in there as well. In this planter there's calendula, which I recently learned I've been pronouncing wrong, and it's calendula, but it just sounds weird when I say that, so I'm probably going to keep calling it calendula. I think there's something planted in there and there, but I don't know what it is, and it hasn't started growing yet, so we'll see if anything does actually pop up. And then this is either basil or oregano. I can't remember and I can't tell the difference, but it's just taken off. I'm definitely going to have to prune this back and dry some of the leaves because it's taking over in a good way, but it's kind of shading out my echinacea, which is doing so well in this location. We have some that have already flowered. I don't think we can see very clearly from up here, but where that stick is, there's actually some corn growing there. I bought some pink popping corn seeds a little while ago, and we decided to plant them here away from the rest of our corn just to prevent any cross-contamination. And we chose this area because we had space. So I would have liked to put it over here where there's this nice big open space, but that is right below a window, and the windows are being replaced this summer. So we didn't want to risk putting the corn anywhere where it might get trampled by the crews installing the windows. So over here, there's got some more in this area. Here's some of it. And then just further along this garden. Also in this garden, we have some chives, which I've just dug up from elsewhere in our yard because they grow wild on our property. Here is a parsley plant that I planted last year. It didn't really do much of anything. I didn't even get a good harvest. And then this spring it just took off. So I think I'll just let it go to seed, and I'll just collect the seeds and maybe some of the leaves, because I still do have a fair bit of parsley from a few years ago. There's more echinacea here. And here are just some sunflowers. A few more over there. This is my chamomile, which I planted last year, and it was not doing very well, but it's doing pretty well this year. It came up very early in the spring, which I was quite surprised about. There's more corn there. This monstrosity is my creeping thyme plant. Again, if you have been on my channel for any length of time and have watched any of my gardening videos, you might remember the story of this creeping thyme. My mother-in-law got me a tiny little plant when we first moved into this house, and that was 10 years ago, and this plant is huge. It takes over everywhere. We find it all across the yard, in other gardens, even in the field behind our house. It's wild, but I really like it because it's such a nice plant, obviously for eating, but also just it looks nice and it smells really nice. And in the spring, there's all these pollinators on the flowers. It's great. Okay, this little section, it just struggles all the time. I've got a few things growing. I've got a catnip, some more calendula and a little marigold. I think that's a weed. And I think I might have sown some chamomile in this section. This is not chamomile, it's comfrey, and I tend to just pull it out. I should also give an honorable mention to this crazy raspberry plant that's growing here. As you can see, it's right next to the air conditioner, but it's also covering the garden hose handle, which is really annoying because then we risk pricking our hands every time we turn it on. And I've been trying for years to hack it down to transplant it, but I don't want to dig right at the base of it because I am afraid there's going to be wires from the furnace and whatever this is, sorry, the air conditioner and whatever that stuff is. But I just cut the branches off and stick those in the ground, and sometimes they grow, sometimes they don't. But we actually have a plan for this. We're going to be putting in a berry patch in a different part of the property next spring, so I'll be moving as much of this as I can to that area. But look how beautiful those black raspberries are. They are so delicious. And no, they are not blackberries, they are black raspberries. I can't wait until they're all ripe. They're so good. We also just have a ton of catnip growing here. We got one small plant from my in-laws that they had dug up from their yard a number of years ago. And since then, it just grows everywhere. It takes over, it's crazy, but it looks nice. And of course, it's good for the cats. We'll just dry some or bring some branches in fresh for the cats, and they have a great time with it. Let's move along to a different garden. This one is kind of a write-off. It gets a little bit of sun in the morning, as you can see right now, but not a lot. So it's definitely more of a shade garden. And it used to be a flower garden. So over the years, I've been slowly taking it over for vegetables and edibles. So right now we've got 2 rhubarb plants, and there are a few pitiful little marigolds that I transplanted from elsewhere, as is evidenced by the shovel that I forgot to remove before filming this. So we've got lots of dill growing here, and I believe this white plant is a yarrow, which was growing in our gravel driveway, so I dug it up and put it here. I have some echinacea, and let me see if I can actually get this in the shot without shadowing it. Another calendula, which I grew from seed. So this garden it's kind of a write-off, like I said, but I don't want to take it out and just have it as lawn because I like having something growing here besides grass. So over the years, I've tried to grow a bunch of different vegetables, and they just don't do very well. We also have the roof overhanging most of this garden, so even when it rains, it doesn't actually get very wet. So I have to water it by hand, which is not a big deal. But I've decided to just let the rhubarb take over, and that's been difficult because I really want to harvest so much of it in the spring, but I know if I do that, it's not going to grow as well the next year. So I'm trying to just show restraint and only pick a few stalks each year until it gets much more established. I've heard that rhubarb will just take over completely, and it's very difficult to get rid of, but I don't mind. I think I'd actually really like that here. And I'm going to just let the echinacea continue to grow, and hopefully it will self-propagate, is that the right word? It'll grow more on its own every year, so there will be more than just the 2 plants here in the coming years. And the dill, like I said, it just looks nice and it's a good space filler. But yeah, that's kind of the plan for this garden. Not putting a whole lot of effort or energy into it, just letting it do its thing, apart from obviously having to water it, but I think it'll look really nice when it eventually fills in. Thank you so much for watching part 1 of my July garden update. This was the harvest garden video, and next week I'll be posting the preserving garden video. I'm pretty excited to show you that space because it's one that you might be familiar with if you've been on my channel for the last few years, but I've made a lot of changes to it, so I hope that you enjoyed this video and will enjoy next week's video as well. And if you like what you see here, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so that you don't miss any single upload that I make. Again, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.